Alright, this is going to be a short tutorial on how to make a small 1 vs 1 deathmatch level in the UT3 Editor. Alright, so first we're going to make this an additive environment by going to File, New, Additive, OK. So we're going to need a few things in order to make this map a playable map. We're going to need a ground plane, maybe some cover, a light, and a spawn point. We're going to start with the ground plane by going to Cube, which is right here, right-clicking, setting its X to 1000, Y to 1000, and Z to 16. That changes the default building brush to those scales. Now we're going to click Add, which is right here, and now we have our plane. Now we're going to start with some cover. Go to the cube and right-click again. Set the X to 256, the Y to 256, and the Z to 144. Click Build, and it'll rebuild the cube. Go into an orthographic and drag it up. Make sure that there isn't a seam there, and there shouldn't be, so we're good. Drag this over into this corner, and then press Add. And now we have our cover. Now go back to the cube again. Set this to 128, 128. And we're going to set that to 128 as well. Alright, the reason we're doing this is we're going to make a small room. What I did right there was I changed the scale for the grid from 16 to 1, so I can move this down accurately without having a seam. And the scale is right here. Alright, I'm going to click Subtract, which is right there. And now I have a hole. So you can tell that it's a hole because the geometry is in yellow, as opposed to a solid object which is in blue. Now you can't really tell what's happened since I'm in lit mode and I'm on the outside of this geometry, but if I were to go inside, I have a small room in here. Alright. Now we can get access to this room a couple different ways. We can save ourselves some trouble and just duplicate this into this corner and make a small hallway. And I think I'm going to do it that way. So, to duplicate something, you hold Alt, left-click, and drag. And that should be good. Alright, and I don't really want this hallway to be the same size as the room, so we're going to alter that. Right now, we're in the translate mode for the manipulator, which is this. So we want to scale it, but we don't want to scale it in 3 ways. So if we were to hit Enter twice, it would change to the all manipulator scale. But we don't want that. So I'm going to delete that because I messed it up. Alright, I'm going to duplicate it again. What we want is just to scale it in the x-axis. So we're going to click on this right here, use non-uniform scaling, and we're going to click on the X and drag it this way. Just a little bit. Alright. You may notice that it doesn't show up as the initial hole did. That's because this is a duplicate and Unreal hasn't recognized it as actual geometry yet. In order to do that and see an updated version of our map, we would have to click on Build Geometry. And there's our hallway and our little room. We're going to now duplicate this again, and I just did that by hitting Enter twice, or hitting Enter once for the rotator tool, rotated it while holding Alt. I'm going to drag it over here, and we have our other hallway. Alrighty. So there is our first little room. Now I'm going to select this entire thing, all 4 of these geometrical objects, by holding Control, Alt, left click and drag over all of them. And now I have all of them selected. I'm going to hold Alt and drag them over here. Press Enter for the rotator. Rotate it. And drop it right there. Alright. I'm going to build geometry so I can see the other room. You may notice that you get a lot of errors. That isn't really important. They're just telling you that none of these surfaces have a material applied to them. But applying materials goes beyond the scope of what I had planned. Alright, so now we need a light. There are a lot of ways to go about building a light. What I'm going to go with for the moment is just holding L and left clicking on a surface. And drag that up there. Make sure that it's within the playable bounds. So you can tell that by this teal circle. It encompasses all the geometry that I currently have. You could also tell by using the lit mode, and that will give you a somewhat accurate representation of how the light is going to be in the level. Go back to unlit. Alright, and now we need to add a player start. So right click on any surface, add actor, add player start. I'm going to drag this over here into the room. I'm going to make sure that the UT editor likes it because, you could have this happen and it says bad size. So basically what that means is you're too close to either the ground or a wall or anything. Alright. Just keep in mind that you should always check something in the UT editor because it's not a happy program a lot of the time. Alright, so now one thing to keep in mind about the player start other than the height is this little arrow. That determines which way the player will start once they spawn. At the moment, we don't really care because there's not really a whole lot of places for them to look. Except in this case, because they'll be facing a wall. So I'm going to rotate that. Rotate that this way. Alright. The thing to keep in mind is that once you rotate something, it will change its axis, so if you want to move it like this, and it just happens to work that time. But anyway, you can press the grave key and it will move back to the world mode, which is always handy, because you never really want to move something in local mode unless you really intend it to be that way. Alright. So we have our light, we have cover, we have our ground plane to walk on, we have our spawn points. Now what we want to do is come up here and click Build All. That will build everything. It'll give us our lovely errors and tell us we need to rebuild our paths. Alright. Now we can actually play our level. Oh, wait, no, sorry. I messed up there. Go to File, Save As, and we need to give this a deathmatch prefix, which is D, M, and whatever happens to be the name that you choose. Alright. What that does is it actually allows you to play as you would in the game in the Unreal Engine. So you can go play from here by right-clicking on a surface, or go to play this level, and that will spawn you at an actual spawn point that you've placed in the level. And now you have a gun and crosshairs and all those fantabulous things. And that concludes this tutorial.